The room felt strange to Henry Blackwood. The air was too thick. The floor was too hard. The lights were too bright. But he was here to do a job, and he would do it well. Henry was a lieutenant in the Earth Space Force. He was chosen for this mission because he stayed calm when others panicked. He thought clearly when others got confused. And now he was the first human to set foot on the alien ship called the Convergence. The aliens were called the Vex-Hari. They looked like tall insects with shiny, hard outer shells. They had 4 arms and 2 legs. Their eyes were large and could see things humans could not. They had watched Earth for many years before they decided to make contact. "Lieutenant Blackwood, we welcome you to the Convergence," said the tallest Vex-Hari. Its voice came through Henry's translator as flat and without emotion. "I am High Counselor Vexthar. We hope this meeting will start a long friendship between our peoples." Henry nodded and gave a small bow. "Thank you for your welcome, High Counselor. Earth is honored by this chance to know your people better." The Vex-Hari had given Henry a room on their ship. It was clear they had tried to make it comfortable for a human, but many things were not quite right. The bed was too firm. The ceiling was too high. The water tasted like metal, but Henry did not complain. He was a diplomat now, and small discomforts were part of the job. For 3 days, the meetings went well. Henry learned about Vex-Hari culture and shared stories about Earth. The aliens seemed most interested in human medicine and how humans healed from injuries. "Your bodies are so soft," said Dr. Zithven, the Vex-Hari medical officer. "Yet you survived damage that would kill us. How is this possible?" Henry smiled. "We may look fragile to you, but humans are very good at healing. We can recover from many injuries that seem terrible at first." Dr. Zithven made a clicking sound that the translator did not change to words. Henry guessed it was doubt or surprise. On the 4th day, disaster struck. Henry was in a meeting room with 6 Vex-Hari officials. They were talking about trade between their worlds. Suddenly, a loud alarm blared through the ship. The floor shook violently. "Gravitational stabilizer failure," shouted one of the Vex-Hari. Before Henry could react, he felt himself lifted off his feet. The ship's artificial gravity was failing, but it did not fail evenly. One moment he was floating. The next he was slammed against the far wall with crushing force. The pain was immediate and overwhelming. Henry heard a horrible crack from his own body. Then came a pain so intense that his vision went white. He tried to move but could not feel his legs. The Vex-Hari rushed to him, their movements quick but careful in the unstable gravity. Dr. Zithven passed a scanning device over Henry's body. The doctor's compound eyes widened and its mandibles clicked rapidly. "The human's central support column is broken in 2 places," Dr. Zithven announced. "For us, this would mean death. I do not know if humans can survive such damage." Henry tried to speak, but the pain made it hard to think, hard to breathe. "My spine? Broken?" "Yes," said Dr. Zithven. "The bones that protect your neural cord have been fractured. The damage is severe." The other Vex-Hari began to back away. In their culture, a broken exoskeleton meant the end of life. They had no concept of living with such an injury. "Take me to medical bay," Henry managed to say through gritted teeth. "Contact Earth. Tell them what happened." The aliens carefully moved Henry to their medical facility. It was not designed for humans, but they did their best. They placed him on a flat surface and used their scanning tools to assess the damage. "Your spine is broken between the 3rd and 4th lumbar vertebrae," Dr. Zithven explained, using terms it had learned from human medical texts. "There is a second fracture at the 10th thoracic vertebra. Among our kind, damage to our central nerve channel cannot be repaired." Henry's mind was clearing a little as pain medication from his emergency kit took effect. "Humans, different. We can sometimes recover, even from this." The Vex-Hari seemed doubtful. They spoke among themselves in their clicking language, not using the translators. Henry could tell from their postures and movements that they thought he was dying. "We will prepare your remains to return to Earth," Vexthar finally said. "We deeply regret this tragic accident." I'm not dead yet, Henry said with more strength in his voice. And I don't plan to die. Get me my communication device. I need to talk to my people. The aliens looked at each other, mandibles twitching. In what Henry had learned was confusion. They did not understand how he could be so calm with such a serious injury. In their world, a broken central support meant immediate death, or, at best, a mercy killing. Hours passed. The pain medication helped, but Henry knew his situation was critical. He had to stay conscious, stay focused. Earth needed to know what had happened. The mission could not fail because of an accident. Using his arms, Henry pulled himself up to a sitting position. The movement sent lightning bolts of pain through his body, but he did not stop. The Vexhari watching him made sounds of alarm. "You must not move," Dr. Zithvan said. "Further movement will cause more damage." "I need to send a message," Henry insisted. "Help me or step aside." Reluctantly, the alien doctor brought Henry his communication device. With shaking hands, Henry recorded a message for Earth Command. He explained what had happened, described his injuries, and, most importantly, stressed that this was an accident, not an attack. "Relations with the Vexhari must continue," he said into the recorder. "This mission is too important to fail because of one man's bad luck." As he finished the message, Henry noticed a small crowd of Vexhari gathered at the medical bay entrance. They were watching him with what seemed like awe. Their antennae twitched and their mandibles clicked softly. "Why do they stare?" Henry asked Dr. Zithvan. "They are amazed you still function," the doctor replied. "With such damage, a Vexhari would already be dead. Your continued consciousness defies our understanding." Henry managed a small, pained smile. "Tell them this is just the beginning. Humans don't give up easily. Now I need materials to stabilize my spine until help arrives." The Vexhari continued to watch with fascination as Henry began to explain what he needed. They did not know it yet, but they were about to learn an important lesson about humans. A broken spine was not the end of the story. It was just the beginning of a new chapter. 6 hours after the accident, the Vexhari were preparing to send official apologies to Earth. They believed Henry would not survive his injuries. They had never seen any being live with a broken central support structure. Dr. Zithvan was in its office writing a detailed report about the human's injuries. Suddenly, an alarm sounded from the medical bay. The doctor rushed to see what was happening. The sight that greeted Zithvan was impossible. Henry Blackwood was no longer on the medical bed. He was on the floor, pulling himself toward the communication terminal with his arms. His legs dragged behind him, not moving. His face was red with effort and sweat covered his skin. "What are you doing?" Zithvan asked, mandibles clicking in alarm. "You should not be able to move at all." Henry looked up, his breath coming in short gasps. "I need to talk to my ship, and I need things from my room." The doctor moved closer, scanning Henry with a medical device. "Your support column is broken. Movement is impossible and will only make your condition worse." Henry gave a small, pained laugh. "For your kind, maybe. Humans are different. We have backup systems, ways to work around damage, and we have something else, pure determination." Zithvan did not understand, but it helped Henry reach the communication terminal. The human's message to his ship was brief but clear. He requested specific medical supplies and equipment. "Earth vessel will arrive in 4 days," Henry said after ending the transmission. "Until then, I need to keep working." News of the mobile human spread quickly through the convergence. Crew members gathered outside the medical bay trying to catch a glimpse of this strange being who defied their understanding of biology. Among them was junior engineer Calamore. Unlike most Vexhari, Calamore had studied other species before joining the diplomatic vessel. She pushed her way through the crowd and entered the medical bay. "I may be able to help," she said to Dr. Zithvan. "I have studied human biology." Henry was back on the medical bed, his face pale from the effort of moving. He looked at the new Vexhari with interest. "How can you help?" he asked. Calamore stepped forward. "Humans have a neural system that can sometimes find new pathways around damage. You call it neuroplasticity. I believe I can create a device that will help support your body while this process happens." Dr. Zithven made a sound of disbelief. The damage is too severe. No neural system could overcome it. Mine can't completely fix it, Henry admitted. But with some help, I can keep functioning until proper medical care arrives from Earth. Over. The next 2 days, Callamore worked with Henry to create a support device. They used materials from the ship and from Henry's personal supplies. The device was a simple exoskeleton that fit around Henry's lower body and spine. This will hold your spine in place, Callamore explained as they tested the device. It will not heal the damage, but it will prevent more harm and may help with the pain. With great care, they fitted the device to Henry's body. It connected at his hips, spine, and shoulders. When they finished, Henry took a deep breath. "Help me stand," he said. Both Vexhari looked alarmed. "Standing is not advisable," Dr. Zithven said. "Help me, or I'll do it myself," Henry insisted. Reluctantly, they helped Henry move to the edge of the bed. With their support on either side, he pushed himself up to a standing position. The pain was intense, and for a moment, his vision went dark, but he remained conscious and upright. Word spread throughout the ship that the human was standing. More Vexahari gathered outside the medical bay. High Counselor Vexathar arrived to see for himself. "Lieutenant Blackwood," Vexathar said. Compound, eyes wide with surprise. "We did not expect to see you vertical again." Henry managed a small nod, though even that small movement sent pain down his spine. "I understand. In your experience, an injury like mine means death. But humans have been dealing with spinal injuries for centuries. We've learned a few tricks." Vexathar's antennae twitched with interest. "Your species continues to surprise us. What do you require to continue your recovery?" "Space to practice walking with this device," Henry said, "and permission to continue our diplomatic talks. We were making good progress before the accident." The High Counselor seemed shocked by the request. "You wish to continue the mission in your condition?" "The mission is too important to delay," Henry said. "My injury doesn't change Earth's desire for peaceful relations with your people." That evening, Callamore helped Henry practice using the exoskeleton in a private room near the medical bay. Each step was agony, but Henry pushed through the pain. He knew he would not truly walk normally again without surgery back on Earth, but he could function well enough to finish his work here. "Why do you push yourself so hard?" Callamore asked, as she adjusted the exoskeleton. "You could rest until your people arrive." Henry shook his head. "That's not how humans work. We don't easily accept limitations. When something seems impossible, we take it as a challenge." Callamore's mandibles clicked in what Henry had learned was their version of thoughtful consideration. "This quality of your species, is it common to all humans?" "To varying degrees," Henry said, taking another painful step. "Some more than others. But it's part of how we've survived and thrived. We adapt, we overcome, we endure." The next day, messages arrived from Earth. The medical ship was on its way, but it would take 3 more days to reach the convergence. Until then, Henry was on his own. That same morning, the Vexhari High Council was meeting to discuss the accident and its implications for relations with Earth. They did not expect to be interrupted. The door to the council chamber slid open. There stood Henry Blackwood, supported by his makeshift exoskeleton. Callamore stood nearby, ready to help if needed, but Henry stood on his own. Every Vexhari in the room froze in shock. Their mandibles clicked rapidly, and their antennae quivered. In their entire history, they had never seen anyone walk after such an injury. "High Counselor," Henry said, his voice steady despite the pain evident in his eyes. "I believe we had trade negotiations to complete." Vexathar rose from its seat, towering over the human. For a long moment it was silent. Then it made a gesture that Henry's translator identified as deep respect. "Lieutenant Blackwood," the High Counselor said, "you honor us with your strength. Please, join us." With slow, careful steps, Henry entered the council chamber. Every eye followed his movement. The impossible human had just changed how the Vexhari would view humanity forever. 2 weeks passed since Henry first walked into the council chamber. Each day he pushed himself to work despite the pain. The Vexhari watched him with growing respect and curiosity. The makeshift exoskeleton improved with each passing day. Callamore worked tirelessly to add features and reduce Henry's pain. She added small motors to help lift his legs. She found materials that were lighter but stronger. The device was now a mix of human and Vexhari technology. "How does it feel today?" Callamore asked as she adjusted a connection on Henry's back. "Better," Henry said. "Still hurts, but I can walk longer before needing to rest." Callamore's antennae twitched with satisfaction. "Good. The materials from your ship helped greatly. Your medical technology is different from ours, but very clever." News of the walking human had spread beyond the convergence. The Vexhari homeworld sent messages daily asking for updates and information. Scientists requested permission to study Henry. Military leaders wanted to know if all humans had this ability to function with severe injuries. High Counselor Vexus Thar called a special meeting with Henry to discuss these requests. "Our people are fascinated by you, Lieutenant Blackwood," Vex Thar said. "In our entire history, we have never seen anyone continue to function with a broken central support structure." Henry sat carefully in the special chair Callamore had designed for him. "I understand their interest, but I'm not here to be studied. I'm here to build a relationship between our worlds." "Of course," Vex Thar agreed. "But perhaps you would consider allowing some observations? It could help us understand each other better." Henry thought about it. "I'll agree to limited medical scans and interviews, but no invasive tests, and we continue our diplomatic work at the same time." The High Counselor made a gesture of agreement. "Your terms are fair. I have also received word that your medical ship will arrive tomorrow." Henry nodded, feeling relief. The Earth ship would bring proper medical care and the ability to talk directly with his superiors. The makeshift communication system on the Convergence was limited. That evening, as Henry rested in his quarters, a soft chime indicated a visitor. The door slid open to reveal Dr. Zithven. "May I enter?" the Vexhari doctor asked. "Of course," Henry said, using the controls on his chair to sit more upright. Dr. Zithven moved into the room with the careful precision typical of its species. "I have been reviewing human medical texts," it said. "I wish to understand how you continue to function." Henry smiled. "And what have you learned?" "Your species has remarkable adaptive abilities," the doctor said. "Your neural pathways can reroute. Your bodies can compensate for damage in ways ours cannot." "That's true," Henry agreed. "But there's more to it than biology." Dr. Zithven's head tilted in question. "Explain." "Humans have something we call willpower," Henry said. "When we decide to do something, we can push past pain, past limitations, past what seems possible. It's not always rational, but it's very human." The doctor considered this. "Is this why you continue to work despite your injury? This willpower?" Henry nodded. "Partly. Also because the mission is important. And honestly, because you all said it couldn't be done." Dr. Zithven made a sound that Henry's translator didn't catch. "This is a concept we must study further." Next day, the Earth medical ship arrived. It docked with the Convergence, and a team of human doctors came aboard. Dr. Susan Rivera led the team. She was a specialist in spinal injuries with years of experience. The Vexhari watched with interest as Dr. Rivera examined Henry in their medical bay. Her face showed surprise when she saw the exoskeleton. "This is remarkable work," she said, studying the device. "Who designed this?" "Callamore," Henry said, pointing to the Vexhari engineer who stood nearby. "She's been keeping me on my feet." Dr. Rivera turned to Callamore. "Your understanding of human physiology is impressive. This design has prevented further damage to Lieutenant Blackwood's spine." Callamore's antennae twitched in what Henry now recognized as their version of pride. "I studied your medical texts." The lieutenant helped explain what he needed. After a thorough examination, Dr. Rivera spoke privately with Henry. "You need surgery, Henry. The brakes are stable for now, thanks to this exoskeleton, but long-term healing requires proper medical intervention." "How long will recovery take?" Henry asked. "With our current technology, several months," Dr. Rivera said. But you'll need to return to Earth for the procedure. We can't do it here. Henry frowned. I can't leave yet. The negotiations are at a critical point. Dr. Rivera looked concerned. Your spine is broken in 2 places. Most people would be confined to bed, not walking around negotiating treaties. I'm not most people, Henry said with a small smile. And this is too important to delay. After discussion with Earth Command, a compromise was reached. Dr. Rivera and 1 medical assistant would stay on the Convergence to monitor Henry's condition. They would bring additional medical supplies to improve his exoskeleton. Henry would continue his diplomatic work for 1 more month, then return to Earth for surgery. The Vexhari were fascinated by the interaction between the humans. High Counselor Vexthar requested a meeting with Dr. Rivera to learn more about human medical practices. In our culture, Vexthar explained, those with severe physical damage are considered non-viable. We do not attempt to repair major structural failures. Dr. Rivera looked shocked. Every human life is considered valuable regardless of physical condition. We've developed countless ways to help people with injuries or disabilities live full lives. This concept seemed to deeply affect the High Counselor. This explains much about Lieutenant Blackwood's determination. Your entire society believes in overcoming such limitations. Yes, Dr. Rivera said. It's fundamental to who we are as a species. That evening, a formal dinner was held to welcome the Earth medical team. Henry attended, walking slowly but steadily with his improved exoskeleton. The Vexhari officials all rose when he entered the room, a sign of respect usually reserved for their highest leaders. As Henry took his seat at the table, he noticed something different. The Vexhari were looking at him not with shock or curiosity, but with something new. It took him a moment to recognize it. It was respect. High Counselor Vexthar raised a drinking vessel in a gesture the Vexhari had learned from studying human customs. To Lieutenant Henry Blackwood, Vexthar said, who has taught us that limitations exist only in the mind. All around the table, Vexhari and humans raised their drinks. In that moment, Henry knew that his painful journey had been worth it. More than any formal treaty, his broken spine had built a bridge between 2 very different species. 1 month after the Earth medical team arrived, Henry's condition was stable but unchanged. He still needed the exoskeleton to walk. The pain was less thanks to better medicine, but his spine remained broken. Despite this, he worked every day. On the treaty between Earth and the Vexhari, Dr. Rivera monitored Henry closely. You should be resting more, she told him one evening as she checked his vital signs. Your body is under constant stress. Henry shook his head. I'll rest when the job is done. We're making real progress. It was true. The negotiations had moved faster in the past month than in the 3 months before the accident. The Vexhari seemed more willing to compromise, more interested in understanding human needs and perspectives. Calamore had become Henry's constant companion. She helped maintain his exoskeleton and explained Vexhari customs that might not be in the official briefings. Today she seemed troubled as they walked slowly through the ship's garden area. Something on your mind? Henry asked. Calamore's antennae twitched nervously. News has arrived from our homeworld. Your situation has caused changes in our society. Henry stopped walking and turned to face her. What kind of changes? For all our history, Vexhari with severe physical damage were considered non-viable. They were not treated. They were allowed to end. Her mandibles clicked in discomfort at discussing such a difficult topic. But now, Henry prompted, now there are protests. Young Vexhari are demanding changes to our medical practices. They say if a human can function with a broken central support, then Vexhari should be given the same chance to adapt. Henry was silent for a moment. He had not expected his injury to have such a profound effect on Vexhari society. Is this causing problems for your leaders? Yes, Calamore admitted. Some traditionalists are saying we should limit contact with humans. They fear your ideas will disrupt our way of life. Henry nodded slowly. Change is often difficult. but sometimes necessary. That evening, Henry was called to an urgent meeting with High Counselor Vexthar. When he arrived at the council chamber, he found not only Vexithar but a communication screen showing another Vexihari. This one wore elaborate decorations that marked it as a very important figure. Lieutenant Blackwood, Vexithar said. This is Supreme Leader Zexran of the Vexhari Confederation. The Supreme Leader wished to speak with you directly. Henry bowed respectfully to the screen. I am honored, Supreme Leader. The figure on the screen studied Henry with compound eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Lieutenant Blackwood, your continued function despite your injury has caused quite a stir on our homeworld. Some say it is inspiring, others say it is disturbing. I understand change can be difficult, Henry said, using the same words he had spoken to Calamore earlier, but I hope our differences can bring our peoples closer, not push them apart. The Supreme Leader was silent for a moment. Tell me, human, in your culture, what value does a damaged individual have? Why expend resources to maintain those who cannot function perfectly? Henry thought carefully before answering. This was, perhaps, the most important diplomatic moment of his mission. In human history, we've learned that physical limitations don't define a person's worth or potential. Some of our greatest thinkers, artists, and leaders had physical challenges. We've found that diversity, including different physical abilities, makes our society stronger, not weaker. The Supreme Leader's antennae moved slightly. And yet it must be inefficient. Perhaps by some measures, Henry admitted. But we've found that societies that value every life, that help each person reach their full potential, are ultimately more creative, more adaptable, and more resilient. Zexran was quiet again, considering. You speak of values beyond simple efficiency. Yes, Henry said. Compassion, dignity, the belief that every life has inherent worth. After more discussion, the Supreme Leader ended the call. Vexthar turned to Henry. You have given the Supreme Leader much to consider, the High Counselor said. This conversation may be more important than all our formal negotiations. The next morning, Dr. Rivera arrived at Henry's quarters with serious news. The latest scans show your condition is worsening. We need to get you back to Earth for surgery within the next week. Henry frowned. The treaty isn't finished. Your health has to come first, Dr. Rivera insisted. The damage is still stable, but there are signs of increased pressure on your spinal cord. If we wait too long, some of the damage could become permanent. Henry knew she was right. He had pushed his body to its limits, and now those limits were pushing back. I'll speak with Vexthar today. We'll accelerate the final negotiations. Later that day, as Henry made his way to the council chamber, he noticed more Vexhari watching him than usual. They stood in doorways and at intersections, their compound eyes following his slow progress through the corridors. When he reached the council chamber, he found it full of Vexhari officials. High Counselor Vexthar stood at the center. Lieutenant Blackwood, Vexthar said formally. We have received word that you must return to Earth soon for medical treatment. Yes, Henry confirmed. My condition requires surgery that can only be performed on Earth. Vexithar made a gesture that the translator identified as solemn acceptance. Then we must complete our work quickly. But before we begin, I have an announcement. The High Counselor turned to address all the Vexhari present. This morning, the Supreme Leader signed a new medical directive. From this day forward, Vexhari with structural damage will be given the opportunity to adapt and continue functioning. If they wish to do so, new medical research will begin immediately to develop methods to help them. A sound like rushing wind filled the chamber, as all the Vexhari clicked their mandibles at once. It was a sound of astonishment. Vexthar turned back to Henry. Your presence among us has changed our society in ways we did not anticipate. This change will not be easy, but we believe it is right. Henry felt a wave of emotion wash over him. All the pain, all the struggle of the past weeks suddenly had meaning beyond diplomacy. I am honored to have played any part in this decision, he said simply. For the next 5 days, Henry worked with the Vexhari Council to finalize the treaty. Both sides made compromises. Both sides found new areas of agreement. The document they created would shape relations between humans and Vexhari for generations to come. On the day before his departure, Henry received a special visitor. A young Vexhari was brought to his quarters by Calamore. Unlike the other, Vexhari Henry had met, this one moved awkwardly with a visible crack in its exoskeleton. "This is Tixval," Calamore explained. 3 days ago, Tixval was injured in an accident. Before your arrival, Tixval would have been allowed to end. Instead, they are the first to receive treatment under the new directive. The young Vexhari stepped forward, movements careful but determined. "I wish to thank you, Lieutenant Blackwood. Your example gives me hope that I can adapt and continue." Henry felt tears in his eyes. "The honor is mine, Tixval. I wish you strength in your recovery." That night, as Henry packed his few belongings for the journey home, he reflected on how differently things had turned out than he expected. He had come to the Convergence to negotiate a treaty. Instead, he had helped start a social revolution with his broken spine. The day of Henry's departure arrived. The Earth medical ship was ready to take him home for surgery. A large group of Vexhari gathered in the docking area to say goodbye. It was unusual for the aliens to show such emotion, but Henry had changed many things during his stay. High Counselor Vexthar stood at the front of the group. "Lieutenant Blackwood, you came to us as a diplomat. You leave as a teacher and friend. The treaty we have signed is important, but what you have taught us about determination and the value of all life is even more valuable." Henry stood with the help of his exoskeleton, which had been polished for the occasion. "Thank you, High Counselor. I came seeking understanding between our peoples. I found it in ways I never expected." Dr. Zithven stepped forward. "I have a request, Lieutenant. I wish to accompany you to Earth to observe your medical treatment. With your permission, I would like to learn how humans repair such severe injuries." Henry looked at Dr. Rivera, who nodded her approval. "We would welcome your expertise, Dr. Zithven. There's much our medical teams can learn from each other." Calamore was the last to approach Henry. She carried a small device in her upper limbs. "This is for you," she said, handing it to Henry. "It contains all the design specifications for your exoskeleton, along with improvements I've been working on. Your doctors may find it useful." Henry took the device with genuine gratitude. "Thank you, Calamore, for this and for everything. I couldn't have done any of this without your help." "You would have found a way," Calamore said, her mandibles clicking softly. "That is what I have learned about humans. You always find a way." As Henry boarded the medical ship, the Vexihari raised their upper limbs in a gesture of respect. Henry turned at the entrance and raised his hand in return. Then the door closed, and the journey home began. The trip to Earth took 2 weeks. During that time, Dr. Zithven learned about human medical practices while Henry rested and prepared for surgery. They talked often about the differences between their species and what they could learn from each other. "In my culture, we have always valued perfection and efficiency," Dr. Zithven explained one day. "Those who were damaged were seen as less valuable. Humans tried that approach in our past," Henry said. "We found it led to cruelty and wasted potential. Some of our greatest contributions came from people who had to find new ways to overcome challenges." Dr. Zithven's antennae twitched thoughtfully. "Perhaps that is why your species adapts so quickly. You do not discard those who must find new solutions." When they reached Earth, a small crowd of reporters and officials waited at the landing pad. Henry had become something of a hero. The story of the diplomat who continued his mission with a broken spine had captured public imagination. Henry was taken directly to the hospital. Dr. Zithven was given special permission to observe the surgery, which took place the next day. The procedure was long and complex, using the latest medical technology to repair Henry's damaged spine. 6 months later, Henry stood in his apartment, looking out at the city. He still walked with a slight limp, but he no longer needed the exoskeleton. Physical therapy had been difficult, but he had approached it with the same determination that had carried him through his time on the Convergence. His communication device chimed. It was a message from Earth Central Command. Henry opened it and read with growing excitement. He was being offered a new position, ambassador to the Vexhari Confederation, the first permanent human diplomatic post in Vexhari space. Henry accepted immediately. 2 months later, after completing his recovery and training, he boarded the diplomatic vessel that would take him back to the Convergence. This time, he traveled with a full staff of human experts in various fields. And this time, he walked aboard the ship on his own 2 feet without pain. When they arrived at the Convergence, Henry was surprised to see how much had changed. The docking area had been redesigned to better accommodate humans. Signs in both Vexhari and English marked important areas. But the biggest change was in the Vexhari themselves. High Counselor Vexthar was there to greet him, along with many other officials Henry recognized, but among them were several Vexhari who moved differently from the others. Some used support devices similar to the exoskeleton Henry had once worn. Others had visible repairs to their exoskeletons. "Welcome back, Ambassador Blackwood," Vexthar said formally. "As you can see, much has changed since your departure." Henry nodded, taking in the sight of the injured Vexhari who now lived and worked openly among their people. "Good changes," he said. Callamore stepped forward from the group. She now wore the insignia of a senior engineer. "The Medical Adaptation Initiative has been very successful," she explained. "Over 300 Vexhari, who would have been considered non-viable, are now productive members of society." "And this is just the beginning," added a voice Henry recognized. Dr. Zithven approached, having returned to the Convergence months earlier. "We have opened a joint research facility with human doctors to develop new technologies for both our species." As Henry was shown to his new quarters, he saw more signs of change throughout the ship. Adaptations for those with different physical needs were everywhere. Ramps alongside stairs, adjustable workstations, support devices of various designs. That evening, at a formal dinner welcoming the human diplomatic team, Henry was introduced to the guests of honor, 5 young Vexhari who had recently completed their education in adaptive engineering. All 5 had physical injuries that would have ended their lives under the old system. One of them was Tixval, the young Vexhari Henry had met just before leaving. Now Tixval moved with confidence, despite the still visible crack in their exoskeleton. "Ambassador Blackwood," Tixval said, "your visit changed everything for us. Because of you, we have a chance to live and contribute." Henry shook his head modestly. "I just showed what was possible. Your people made the choice to change." Later, as Henry stood at the viewport looking out at the stars, High Counselor Vexthar joined him. "Sometimes," Vexthar said quietly, "the greatest diplomatic achievements come not from treaties and agreements, but from simple human courage." Henry smiled at the use of the word human in that context. "And sometimes," he replied, "the broken things turn out to be the strongest." Together, human and alien looked out at the stars, 2 species now bound by understanding that had come from the most unexpected of places, a broken spine and the will to keep walking.